Okay. One of the things that I wanted to present Elasticsearch because that is one of the things that we use in my job. But I really didn't understand exactly what it is, and I know that it's really useful, especially for people or well, our users that are the citizens. Okay, who am I? Well, I am from Peru. Actually, I am not from the capital city. I am from a place called Huacho that is close to Lima. And actually, currently I am living in Miraflores, that is in the capital city. Well, the place where I work is called gov.pe. There is the place where you can go and check. It's a platform when all the citizens can go to find all the process. I don't know how to say it. ¿Cómo decir este? Never mind. Just go there and see what happens. Oh well, the citizens can go there and see how they can get your license, get how to get married in Peru, for example, that kind of things. And actually, I am crazy cat lady. Currently, I had just one cat. I used to have two, but one died just in the pandemic. And I like a lot of things, but I have an idea about what else could I add here. Okay, so let's start about this. Why Elasticsearch? A lot of people talk about Elasticsearch is actually famous, has say Walter. It's a little bit curious about what else could add Elasticsearch for our project because I honestly am fan of PostgreSQL. But what else could add you as Elasticsearch to your project? So one of the things that one of the things that I wanted to understand why what is this use in our project? Okay, because they are good in what they do. So exactly what they do. I was reading about Elasticsearch that they use Lucene. And what is Lucene? Lucene is just a JavaScript library focused on what is searches. If you want to know what exactly is a search engine, it's like a Google. You write something and you try to expect something, some kind of result based on what you are looking for. So that is something that Lucene does for Elasticsearch, but in Elasticsearch you can find a lot of more benefits. Why is this? Because you have scalability. You can start with a small project and then include clusters or also nodes to make it better to getting big. I don't know how to say it actually. Well, it gives you speed. One of the things that I found about Elasticsearch is that they're trying to use what is called, well, because it is created, well, because it has Lucene behind, is that they have a lot of technology related to what is big database, how big database are managed. Well, we're going to talk about it later. Easy to use because on what you can do is use an API. Multilingual, actually, because in our project it is implemented in Spanish also. So that is one of the benefits that we can see here. Document oriented, because it's kind of where the part behind of a book, the last page of a book, what you find is something related to an index. When you find the words and where are in the pages, instead of just trying to find a word in every page just to find what is what you want. Auto-completion, because you try to write and also Elastic helps you to predict what you are trying to find. And schema-free, this is something that I don't think that it is in Elastic, because even if they don't use a scheme, using relational database, you can find something that is called mapping. But well, One of the common user case, of course, if you are trying to find, you want to make searches, you want to try to find something related to logins and log analysis, scraping and combine public data, because you can include even external links or external data that you want to be findable, searchable. Full text search, what is the one I would like to expose today? Event data and metrics, because you can find what is the most common, the top 10, what the people is searching. And actually, you can visualize in data. You can make that through an extra software, but it is easy to manage. Well, if you want to host on cloud your data, you can use, well, the most common, Alibaba, Amazon, and also Google Cloud. So let's continue talking about the concepts. Well, as I was talking just before, we have, if this is an index, this is something that we used to, you want to hear always in Elasticsearch, where here you can see the last part of a book, and you see the words, and where are the pages where you are going to find the word. And it was really useful. And I want to show you this because I could realize that many of the things that are developed nowadays is related in things that used to be manuals before. Something has to happen before, so now you want to make it automatic. So if we want to see what is Elasticsearch or exactly Lucene or everything related to search engine, it's try to replicate this. That is something that I think that it is. Maybe I am wrong. So this is also an index, but that is how Elasticsearch is working. This is called inverted index. That is something where you use a word and then you can and there you can see the documents where they are and actually the position where they are. When I was trying to understand about Elasticsearch, about their structure, this is something that really was useful for me. I was trying to find a lot of webs, trying to see what was something similar, something to make me easy to understand, and it was something that really was useful for me. In Elasticsearch, what is called index, we can say something similar in databases that is a database. Table is a type, and a row is what is called a document. And of course, a column is a field. And actually, there is something called schema, what is used in database, that in Elasticsearch is called mapping. So this is something that makes, when we talk about clusters, nodes, charts, this is something that what makes Elasticsearch faster and scalable. If when you start, or for example, you want to make an example inside your computer, you only can use a node. It is not necessary to use the rest of this. And you only can configure one chart. One chart is what is called segment in big databases. In big databases, it is called segments, and it's different ways to create index. Something that really was useful for me is to understand how index in a relational databases worked. Usually, it is a big. I didn't know there was a kind of table, and it was like every line when you index something, every column is a line of the data that you want to index. But here is different because all the data is just joined by some kind of sorts. That is what makes a little bit faster, but I know I am talking a lot and I would like to continue. Okay, one of the things that I really like about Elasticsearch is, well, as you usually have in a relational database, when you try to add data, you have to make three processes: normalization, indexation, and actually search. I decided not to talk about normalization because this is a common process that you do when you try to create a database or include data in a database. So it's just the process that you have to see what empty columns and also empty words, or if the data has to be in capital letters, or just what kind of data you are going to try to include. And the second part is the indexation. That is something that was really useful for me, because in Elasticsearch, when we talk about API, that is what it is. So I try to make an example about what is a CRUD process, for example. If you want to create, all what you have to do is just through a URI composition, just try to use the put to create, for example, an index called playlist, and what is something kind of a table, and actually the ID that you want to do it. That is, for example, this is here. You want to read, all what you have to do is just try to get the element. And when you want to make an update, all what you have to do is just to put similar to this, but with a new data. And just automatically this is going to be added. And also a delete. When you want to delete, all what you have to do is just send the delete options, and actually the URL that you want to, the element that you want to delete. And this is the part about the search. This is something that one of the pictures that is showing here is what is in a little bit example that I am about to present. Based on the documentations, you have some kind of parameters that you have to send for make a query, to send a query. And here we have what is just a common example. What you wanna, if you want to find something, you need to get the search word and actually the queue, and in this case the year that you want to find, and this is something that you will like to get. Okay, one of the functionalities that you have in Elasticsearch nowadays is what is called fuzzy. That is when you try, and this is really useful. One of the things that I was trying to understand about fuzzy is how it works or something, especially here. For example, we have when we change the words just by mistakes, or when we remove part of the words, or when we make inserting or the or transposing. That's a really common mistake that people usually do. When we talk about highlights, it's something that you have to configure it to see how it works, but it's just when you change behind the CSS of the word that is matched with what you're looking for. Aggregation is something a little bit new for me. That is when you have kind of tags and you want to make a summary about the tags that match with what you're looking. And now, how you could connect Elasticsearch with rates. Actually, there is a gem that is called Elasticsearch model and also Elasticsearch rates. That is something that is shown in the documentation of this gem. No, this is time to return on what I was about to show you. Sorry, this is the big. This is. So this is a little bit example that I am running here. I don't know if you can see what I'm seeing or not. Okay, I'm going to return. What about right now? Yeah. What about now?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, this is a close example about what I want to present. This is just something easy to understand how does it work. For example, here we have just Elasticsearch post. For example, we have here just a couple of lines about post, author, title, tags, publish status, publication date, and also the actions. I want to present how everything works here. For example, this is just a self publish about the query that I'm going to send here. This query is going to show me only everything that is going to be published. If it isn't published, this is not going to be shown. For example, you're trying to find the word collections. This is going to show me everything what is called about collections and where the published status is true. You want to return something like a fuzzy, we talk about when you made the writing. For example, Mr. Cats. I made a mistake. I write cast. This is going to find something related to cats. This is what it is, a fuzzy search. So if we want to talk about what highlight does, we kind of write something like landscape. And we can see that everything that is written like this word is going to be bolder. If we talk about aggregation, that is what I'm talking about, what is the searches. For example, I want to try to find what is basic. We can see there is just one that is shown here. Or if it is something complex, we can see that is only 3 here. That is what is aggregated here. So how is that Elasticsearch does this? There is our model post, what are included two of the gems that is asked inside the gem, that is say that you have to include this gem, these gems, you have to call them.
They're called
And this is,
concerns.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Gem.
Yep. The gem provides several things, including those concerns that you've included.
Mm-hmm. And here we have the first step that we have is just the part what you want to show what to analyze. In this case, we see the filter, and as you can see, this is a JSON. There is no more magic here. The magic is behind inside the Elasticsearch. For example, this is one of the things that we have. That is when we want to add Spanish. This was before this way. If we want to configure it for an extra language, this is something that we include here. But for this case, because we were using just English, I decided just to remove it and just leave it there, so you can see that this can be configured for extra languages. In this example, we have just one chart. Why one? Because this is a small example. Here we have. And here we have what is the mapping, what I was talking before, that instead of a schema, what use Elasticsearch is just mapping. That is how you decided how your data is going to be called, or how it's going to be defined. Because if you don't give this, Elasticsearch is going to define them by themselves. So these are the two things that are really important to configure here. And then we have what is the query to find. For example, we was trying to find what it was the published post, and here is something, the fields that we are including that is going to be added to our search. And also we have something what is about fuzzy, and actually we add the fields that we want to find. And when we talk about highlights, we have to configure how we want to change the text that it is found. We decided to add just the strong, and there are a lot of parameters like fragment size, that is how big it has to be, number of fragments on the binary charts. I think it is useful to easy to understand when you in English. And also when we have the search aggregation, we have the fields that we have, and also how is the fuzziness is going to work. And actually this is going to be highlighted. And this is the part when we talk about in this section. When we talk about this is something that is included. You first what you do is just delete what was behind, and then what you do is you recreate and sending the mapping, sending all the data that you have. So it is something useful. But I wanted to show you something what is really useful in our job, in my job. This is when what was here is what is locally. But I asked to my company if I could send this, and they say it's okay. So I wanted to show you. This is something really, this is bigger. This, if you find in gov.pe, you can see that is kind of a CMS. So we have a lot of documentations, what is pages, official collection, a lot of ministries. There is something related to ministries, to the government, or things like that. So it is something that is really useful, because with that you can make easier the life of citizens and even the functionaries that works in the government. So, for example, here, what we decided to do was to create as a model that is called search documents. We included the concepts of the gem, and actually we make it searchable. This is something bigger. So we decided to include, for example, this is part of the ElasticSearch. This is something more bigger. We decided to use like Spanish. This is a kind of spy tremor. Actually, we decided to use just one chart for all what is dynamic. And this is the kind of indexes that we decided to include to our ElasticSearch data. One of the things that really was interest was it was included what is the weight. We can do that in ElasticSearch. And the rest of this, if you can see, included what is this is included one of the things that is used in the gem. And this is a really big project, I know. And this is how the data is indexed. Actually, we have right now a project that the data has to be indexed even in multi-languages, not only in Spanish. That is why we have this kind of solution here. That is a little bit different what I presented in before, because it was just an example. And then I wanted to show you also how is a job defined for Elasticsearch. Here we have that we call what is the client Elasticsearch. Actually, we include the host, what is going to be sent. Actually, the name of the index, that is the database, in how it is performed. When it's indexed the data, how it's going to be sent, and then when it is going to be deleted, how it is going to be sent. So this is how we decided to implement Elasticsearch in our project. That is a big project, and it was really useful. Because of this, we can do something like this. For example, license, that is licencia. This is one of the things that we do. Here we have what is the aggregation method. Here we have what is a lot of results that we have. And I think something called about highlight, it isn't working here, but this is one of the things that I am really interested about Elasticsearch. So returning here, we have in the settings, the text analyzers that we can see. That is where we define it. What are we going to add? The mappings where you define it. What is the data that you want to send to Elasticsearch, and what Elasticsearch has to be focused. And also in the section where you send the data that I will show it could be local, something really a short example, and actually you can index. You can send the index to the server. And well, it was a short presentation, so thank you for listening to me.
I was just playing around with the website, and other than needing to remember Spanish words, it works pretty well. I mean, it's really fast returning results.
Yeah. That is one of the ideas. Trying to give to the citizens actually in Peru the best tools. One of the things that I really like where I work is that they are really open to what is open source, what is new technologies, and everything that is related to Rails, actually. So this is a good example about how you can use Elasticsearch. But as you say in the beginning of this conversation, not everything is for Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch is just good if you try to find big data and faster. But if, for example, if you have an officer that can take a time to find an institution, the name of an institution, it is just too much for a search like that, and it can be just useful just doing a post SQL query, and with that could be just enough.
Yeah, it really depends a lot on the data. When you had a screen open, one thing occurred to me. You were showing, how you were doing stimming, and I think by default it does English words, and then you specified a Spanish configuration to do better with Spanish words. If you had both, say, English and Spanish documents in the same index, would you have to do something differently to get Elasticsearch to do its job right?
I couldn't understand you last time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Um, so by default, Elasticsearch searches English. You set a parameter to tell it to do Spanish using a setting. If you had both English and Spanish documents in the same site, would there be a way to do both?
I know this is something that we are still investigating, because we're trying to make a research, because this is something that we are trying to implement right now. I mean, right now, today, in this week, actually. So yeah, we have to make a special configuration first for try to translate to English. We could find it, we could index, but then we are trying to include something special for well, we don't know yet how to find that special configuration that you are asking. But if someone else knows it right now in this moment, I am open to suggestions.
Hmm.
Yeah, so Frank, are you talking more about having a mix of the data? So when it gets indexed, some of it's in Spanish, some of it's in English, and then try to differentiate between the two?
I was yeah, I was curious about that, but I was really asking just to understand how one would think about it. So I suppose you could have an English index and a Spanish index and search both of
Mm-hmm.
them, and then intermix the results.
Yeah, we are just in the step that we are indexing the data, but now we have the second steps about how to get the query, well, how to configure Elasticsearch for mixing too. But the thing is, right now we are, agile method.
Hmm.
Right now it's just we are just trying to use. Citizens are just looking for results in Spanish. That's the problem, and now the next part is trying to include the in English, and then you can include the rest of the multiple languages that we are trying to use Elasticsearch.
Right.
Right now, if
Mm-hmm.
you can see, if you go to the the web, everything is in Spanish, but
Hmm.
in the Elasticsearch, just in English and also Spanish. Well, first Spanish and then English.
Right. So I would use this site if I was in Peru to look up like how do I get a matrimonial like a marriage license or what would it be a licencia escopeta or something if I were a hunter. I'm guessing I would like look up things like that and then tell go to this court or fill out this form for the government service. Cool.
Yeah, I would probably look at some of the browser settings because you can get that kind of information about what kind of locality someone has on their browser, and I would default that to the search language that you're searching for.
Do the
Um,
oh go on.
wouldn't it make sense to search by whatever language locale they've set it to? So like you can uh, in your router scopes you can define a locale.
Wouldn't it
Um,
also depend upon the language of the documents that are being indexed? I mean, if the government services are all in Spanish and all the documents are in Spanish, then hmm.
Yes, it is
mm,
something that we was trying to figure out how to make it. So I know we know that that is the next step.
Hmm. Very
Because
cool.
you can use a drop down selecting your language and try to make the search in that language that will be useful. But that is part of the UX team try to find out how to make that. Well, included the developers to see what is possible and what it isn't.
is well, this I'm just throwing out an idea, but couldn't you include metadata attached to the document that says what locale it's in? And then in your Elasticsearch, I mean, you can filter by the different metadata of the document. So uh, you could return only results that have metadata attached to a certain language.
Sounds like a tax, right?
Well, actually, no, that might not work because the indexing is still done in a specific language. I don't know.
Yeah, that is because it's really mixing. Is, how the user is going to navigate through the page. One of the things, for example, that I really hate about CookPad, it's that when you select a language, you can see another language. And I really hate that. I would like to write something and try to discover in every language, but that is me, maybe not the rest of the users. So it's just try to figure out how to make it the easiest way, and how the rest of users are navigating in the site.
Is there anything that links the same document? Like if the same document is translated in 3 different languages, does it have a document ID that connects all 3, or do you just not have IDs for any of your documents? Like I don't know, like Form 182. Is for hunting licenses.
One of the things that we use is a gem called locale. That is the gem that we are using, including per paper tray. That is something that we're trying to use for manage what is something related to my multi-languages.
Okay, so the gem paper trail lets you link the different translations of the documents.
Actually, with paper trail, it has a tag that is called that version is in Spanish, and then it has a version in English.
Oh. So if you did the result only in one language, you could still pull up the attached records based on that that connection.
Yeah, that is a solution. Actually, I was thinking about, yeah, it was, yeah, I'm still trying about it. No, actually, we are trying to make the translation in around 20 languages. 15, sorry, because it's French, German, Spanish, well, English, also Quechua, what is in a lot of multi-languages. That is something we are trying to find. Well, it is something that it has been asked by the Ministry of Relation Affairs, the Relations Exterior. Yeah, that is something that we are really need to implement. Yeah, the thing is we have a lot of data. That's a problem. But maybe, well, this is something that we still need to think, that we're still right now talking. Well, that is what I wanted to make a presentation about Elasticsearch, to understand something and try to help them to solve something about that.
Well, I'm interested. I saw the use of the Elasticsearch gem, the one that I've been using has been SearchKick, and that has a much more Railsy approach to things. And I feel like what you've done here is show me what's under the covers there. So I appreciate your presentation very much, and I'm not sure that I've gotten anything actionable out of it, but it's certainly shown me that there's a lot more to explore under the hood.
Yes, actually, there is a lot. It's just, Lucene is really big, and there are a lot of things that I didn't know what to present today. I didn't know to present more about Lucene or more about Elasticsearch, because Elasticsearch is just more for inverted index, but Lucene, it has like a chain of four types of search. So Elasticsearch is just based on what is inverted index. And actually, when I was watching the video about the 6 years ago Elasticsearch presentation in this group, they were talking about Apache Solr. And I was trying to understand a little bit, because I just have like a 20 minutes and say, no, I'm going to try to focus here. But what I could find was that Solr is more for something related to database. It's really important, like Elasticsearch and Solr and Apache Solr, but by far Elasticsearch is just the most common, the top of every about search engines. But I want to try to make a look just to see what is the benefits about it. But it was really interesting trying to find out about Elasticsearch and Lucene, actually.
Yeah. Elasticsearch does have a language identification module built in it that might help with being able to do searches on documents, even though they are in various languages. So that could be a solution. I can post a note, post a link in the chat, which might help with some of that kind of stuff that you're trying to solve there.
Thank you. I'm gonna make it a look.
Yeah, so basically they have Elasticsearch has a machine learning module, the inference ingest processor, which does language identification. It came out in Elasticsearch 7.6. So you might be able to do a search in one language and have it find common terms on documents that are in a different language. I mean, that would be awesome.
Yes, I think that the moment when we saw this, I would like to present it to the group and say, hey, we could get it. Take a look about what we did. Actually, yes, because one of the things that I really like about where I am working, it's the value added is because we make a previous research before implementing something, before developing something. So it has been really useful for us. So of course, I'm going to share what you are saying right now to our team, especially everyone here, because everyone speaks English right now. So you are part of you are the public of this problem that we have. Yeah.
Is Frank
Yeah. That's something I
is
really like.
sorry, is Frank correct when he in the assumption that the Spanish is the most number of documents, or are you planning to translate every single document that you have into all 20 languages?
Yeah, the main language is going to be Spanish because it's the official language.
Uh-huh.
And then it's going to be, I assume it is going to be English, but actually this is going to be included by the one entity. This is, they are going to be in charge about the translations because they are the official translators. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's right what Frank is saying.
Okay.
So any questions, any solution, something I would like to talk?
So it's not exactly the same thing. It's a different sort of. I've done these sorts of searches, not multi-language, but in like say a state government agency, website built in Ruby on Rails, and there's a search, very similar, right? Published documents, and one thing that I found, and it's very simple, that was helpful to users, was when you misspell a word, you got kind of poor results. And one thing that I did in Ruby on Rails was using the A-spell library, which is a spell check library. And all I did was when it thinks it has a misspelled word, it corrects it to the first one, and then it has an alternate string. And so when you type in a search and you get whatever results, it will say, and this isn't the search, but that logic will then say, did you mean, kind of like Google did, and the string with the words corrected. I mean, you could get more sophisticated. And then if you click that, it redoes the search with the spelling corrected, and you found out that users like that they misspelled a word and they got poor results, but when they clicked that link, they got the results they were looking for. um, I feel like something like that could be helpful, either spelling correction, or maybe also, if like there's almost no results, try to run it through a Google Translate and just offer, did you mean this, and then search the Spanish index for that, if it's possible. I don't know if you'd have to test to see if that feels useful to users.
Well, that is something that I use when I do Google search because I try to translate in English and also in Spanish, and we receive the suggestions from Google when we Google. And I think it has been useful right now. Or maybe I get used to that.
Right. Like I was thinking, let me share a window, and so like this was just playing around. So then I was like, let's see, Buscar. Um, so I'm typing this marriage license. There's no results because that's English.
Yeah.
But if I went to Google Translate behind the scenes, right, and said, oh, the tech language in Spanish. Wait, no, I got that back. And so then if you said, hey, did you mean here? And I clicked that link, and then it redid that, then I do have some results. So you might be able to do a logic when you have a no result situation.
Yeah, that's true. That's cool.
Yeah, I like that idea. I'm wondering if it would be useful to, because a hard problem is trying to detect the correct language, and an easier problem might be just to, if there are 0 results, to have the user select the correct language, because the user knows what language they're trying to search in. So if there's no results, maybe, instead of did you mean this other word, uh, present something that helps them change the search language.
Mayra, are you muted on purpose?
Oh, me?
No, no, I was talking about Mayra, but
Oh, sorry.
Oh. Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the last part?
Nelson, did you?
Oh, so if there are 0 results, instead of trying to do something hard, which is detect what language they might have meant, to do something a lot easier, which is if there are 0 results, then have the user select a different language,
Mhm.
and present an easy way to do that near the search bar.
Like an option to select the language of your search, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something that I think this is the easier part of to implement here, and I'm pretty sure that they are going to ask something like that.
There's also some JavaScript libraries which do language detection, which might also be helpful. That way you don't have to ask the user.
Yeah, it's like
Hmm.
She's muted. You're muted.
sorry. I don't realize when I am muted. Oh, the first part it's well implemented. So in Spanish, so in English it is not yet tested because, but I know. Well, one of the things that I was thinking about it is that in the English part we still need to find how to join it, and also the rest of the language, because it's not just one. There are around 20, as I say before.
I realized I was just muted on the recording. Um, say you have your official Spanish document for the government, and then there's official translations. Maybe there's an English. There's you mentioned 20 languages, but let's say there's a Peruvian dialect that's spoken in the mountains that Google really doesn't know, but because these people are citizens of Peru, there's an official translation. Then it seems like your best bet is to have an index specific to that language, and then if you search and there's no Spanish results, you then search the other indexes until you get some number of results, and then you offer to switch them to that language if the user wasn't already, and you show it that way. Kind of like loop through until you start finding what seems like probably good results for what they searched.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Something that I was thinking of when you talk about was about new languages that I'm not sure, but maybe in Elasticsearch you could create your own dictionary, right?
I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
But I'm assume this is going to be implemented just by the time. No, right now. Yeah, what you're saying is something that is really useful, especially because you don't say something that is not resolved, but it's something that someone really hates.
Mhm.
Everybody hates it. It's not resolved.
Yeah. Hey, let me share my
Yeah.
screen for a moment if I'm able to. All right. Are you able to see my Chrome browser?
Yes.
Yes.
This is a library that I found which might be right on par with what you're looking to do, where you can take in a query that the user has entered. So their console log is a good example, where you have the string that maybe the user typed in the search box, and then you can use stimulus.js or something to prevent it from actually doing the form submit. You can then run it through Frank. I like that name. No pun intended, I guess, here, Frank.
Mhm.
And basically, it'll give you a result of what it thinks that language is. And so it looks like it's getting some pretty good percentages here. And you can scope it to the only 20 languages that you are wanting to support. And so that way, when you make your post, you know the string, but now you also know what language you most likely need to be searching against.
I'm trying to access on the page that you are seeing.
Yeah, I
Can
just
you share
posted it.
the? Yeah, thank you.
I think that's a very promising direction if I were
Yeah.
trying to solve the same problem.
Yes, it is. It's really easy to implement.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it has too many moving parts. It's an MIT
Yeah.
license. It supports over 100 languages, 187 or so.
One question about the MIT license. There is a sub part where you have to add how the developer wants to be attributed. It's one of those attribution licenses. I prefer licenses that have default attribution terms and conditions. MIT, last time I checked, didn't. But was the setting? How did the licensor requested to be? How can I speak today? I'm sorry. I'm sure I'm thinking kind of hungry.
Yeah, license compliance though shouldn't be too bad. Even if you need to have a link somewhere in the bottom of the page that says you utilize this library, that should be doable.
Yeah, I mean that's usually what it is, but there's no default. That's
So their agency can check that license if it looks promising and make sure they're doing the right thing.
yeah. Well, it's not really a problem unless the licensor doesn't state how he wants to be attributed. Because legally, with the MIT, you have to do that. Well, actually, all the attribution licenses as well. But let's just say I've heard some horror stories, people using some open source license that's great, but they didn't properly attribute the person, and some toxic company bought the company that made the thing, and bad things happen.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
the
there's always
MIT
that
is
risk.
one of those that are really open. It's pretty much saying you can do whatever you want with this. You can even sell it if you want to, but you can't sue us for any damages.
Yeah, I think
True.
And you
you're
had
good.
to include a copy of this license
Yeah.
notice.
But basically, Oracle bought a company that made something under an older version of MIT, and there was some person building a product with it, and they got to be vertical.
I would not worry, Mayra, about that for this library. That's very unlikely.
That's our
True.
hope.
I'm just a little bit paranoid because I was on the receiving end of one of those license compliance things once upon a time, and it was annoying.
Sure. Well, GPL v3 would probably be more problematic than
Well, it
MIT.
depends. If it's an end user product, GPL v3 actually works. If it's a library and framework, MIT or Apache 2 would probably be better.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the feedback there. That is important to always look into what the license of your library is.
Like if you, for example, I'm one of those people that think that licenses should always be a more permissive product. A license, a library and framework should always be a permissive type license. But if you're building an end user product, I'm putting a restrictive license on that, usually GPL or AGPL. Version 2 allows for closed source add-ons on top, but you have to clarify how you do that. And GPL version 3 was meant to clarify what counts as what is allowed to be an open source derivative product, what has to be under the GPL, what doesn't. So
Yeah.
One
cool thing that you can do when
licensing
you're
could be its own topic for another day. It goes all sorts of places. So,
but if you need to figure this out for your company, run bundle license at the root of your application, and it'll print out all of the gems and the licenses that they use.
Yep, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's see, Luis. You are also anyway, do you have any questions or feedback or want to see something?
Or maybe have you worked before with ElasticSearch?
Oh, I also muted. Sorry about that. Yeah, well, I barely scraped the surface of Elasticsearch at a past project before. I think it was used for discoverability, I think, of user data between different clients. I don't know. But yeah, I've frankly had more success using something like Algolia for personal projects. I think it's like from my usual use cases, it's much simpler to do something like that, or just Postgres as well. I see some people here have this slight preference, not going full Elasticsearch as well. And I would definitely be interested in hearing some talk in the future about how to efficiently use PostgreSQL to achieve a lot of things that you can do with Elasticsearch. That'd be great. I have also done that in some past projects, and it's kind of like Wild West there because everybody's doing it its way. There's no standards, I believe. We kind of hacked whatever we could there, so that'd be great if we could talk about that in the future.
Yeah, I think overall, I heard a few different full text searches mentioned so far tonight. One of them, of course, Elasticsearch, but then also some Sunspot Solar, and oh, shoot, what was the other one? Regardless, I've worked with Sunspot Solar a lot in the past. We still have an application up and running with it. And honestly, I wish I knew about Elasticsearch back then. It is so much better, more stable than Sunspot. So I think you guys definitely went in a good direction there. As far as doing like a PG search, just a full text search in MySQL or in Postgres, I think that that works great, and I've actually removed Elasticsearch from a few of my applications in favor of doing that because I was trying to hammer a nail in with a sledgehammer for my particular use cases. So I think for a lot of people, getting away with doing the database search, even the full text database search is the proper route. But Myra, in your case, I think you were definitely taking the right route with going with Elasticsearch just because of the amount of data that you're going to eventually be dealing with. Normally, I would recommend going small first. Just don't even do a full text search on your database until you actually need it. And then once you start really needing it, or you're finding yourself having to create indexes on every single attribute because you're doing searches across all of those, and that's happening a lot for a large amount of data, then you need to start looking into a proper full text search mechanism.
Thank you. It reminds me that before trying to find what to present today, I took a course about Redis search, because this is something new in Redis. And while I was searching the internet, I could realize that it's not too mature to be compared with Elasticsearch yet. Even if there is a product from the Elasticsearch company that uses Redis. I don't remember the name right now, but I know that I could see it in some of the pages that they have. So if even them are using Redis in some of their products, it means that is really useful, but not as useful for searches like Elasticsearch.
Yeah, I think if you're working with simple data, Redis search is going to be overall more efficient and faster. But as soon as you get beyond anything basic, I'm pretty sure it would start to fall apart.
So it does make me wonder if because PostgreSQL, I've done both MySQL and PostgreSQL based index search, and I've done some very context aware searches where no index search is going to do as well as you know like if you type a certain phrase in, it's like, oh, I'm going to load up some Ruby objects that help you calculate like calendar events. There's domain logic beyond just searching what's in the documents. um, those are hard, but what I was going to go for is, I think that a trigram index full text search should be fairly language agnostic as long as the words that you were searching existed in the documents. Um, but but to Dave's point, I think given the scope of your use, I think you're in the realm of where you are doing the right thing with Elasticsearch. I've certainly seen Elasticsearch added to projects because, oh, I need search, I'm going to add Elasticsearch, and it's added a lot of complexity, and I've been the one to remove it because a simple database search, like maybe with a substring match, like %sign at the end, was all that was needed.
Mm.
So
And if you are on the fence about doing a normal search, a full text search, you don't know what's going to be the right direction. You don't want to overcomplicate it, but you also don't want to go overly invested in one direction. I would suggest extracting out any kind of logic that would call Elasticsearch, or extract out any kind of logic that would do the normal query over into its own plain old Ruby object to do all of the business logic of the search there. And then if you ever decide like, okay, this isn't working for us anymore, we need to go to Elasticsearch, or vice versa. Elasticsearch was a sledgehammer that we did not need, then you can easily revert it to a different mechanism by only changing those specific files instead of all throughout your application.
I like that a lot,
You're-
and I did that in that complicated search that I alluded to, there was literally a search object, and then at some point there became a search v2 object that was experimental, and then later I think everyone was using search v2, but it made it really easy to change out the search and then have the rest of the controller actions be agnostic to which search was being used.
Yeah.
And you could even do that to have like basic search and advanced search as a user option, and then based upon what they selected, you could initiate a search object to then run the query through to do the logic.
One of the things that I would like to talk here is actually take care of the data that you are hosting in your Elasticsearch, because 2 weeks ago I 2 weeks ago when I decided to make this presentation, one of my colleagues sent me a news about Elasticsearch security break, and it reminds me to Frank's Riera blog and all the security stuff that you write. So it is something that I wanted to talk here. So be careful with the data that you host in your Elasticsearch, because some hacker can access to that.
Well, it's like any other database. It's a
Yeah.
data store, and so if you do what's called if you're doing a security assessment or security design, what we're told to do, or what's a good idea, is to have what's called a data flow diagram, and this is required by some standards. But it basically shows where data goes and where it goes to live. And one of the big things is, like, great, you have your PostgreSQL, but is that your only store? No, your Elasticsearch is another database. Um, so, yeah, it needs to be protected. If you are, using, AWS, you want it to be behind a security group, that is not accessible from the public, but is only used by your servers. Um, and also, you do have to care about scoping. If in the case where you're searching public information, it's kind of the simplest case. You can just have an index. In the case where you have sensitive information or information that's specific to an account, like let's say I made a app. I don't know. I'm thinking, like, let's add
Searching
with multiple
medical
users,
documents. Yeah.
and you don't want to, and it has private documents in there, and I can search my documents. You don't want a bug that lets me search your documents too. If I'm just a normal user, you don't want to cross the streams, and that's really easy to do when you're throwing everything into an Elasticsearch index, like a big one.
Oh yeah. I just encountered that the other day. It wasn't a product I worked on, but I'm a customer of that product. And I started typing in their autocomplete search field to add my wife to the account. And it started popping up with a whole bunch of other random users'
Hmm.
email address or location and stuff. And so I emailed them and said, hey, you guys got an issue here.
All right, great thing that you did that. And Frank, I have a question. You were talking about having separation of data. How difficult is that, and how performant is Elasticsearch? Or maybe that this is a question for Mayra as well. Um, for example, when you want to make a multi-tenant application with Rails in the PG backend, maintaining different schemas is very complicated. And migrations are really, really hard to do. So that's usually a route that's not taken. And how difficult is that to achieve that kind of separation in that Elasticsearch
Right.
backend?
So in Rails, separate databases or separate schemas is not the main way to go. Um, I was alluding to it earlier in when we just started chatting with Dave about something related to that, but that's very experimental and specific. In a multi-tenancy situation, typically, what you do that with, like an account ID field, and you make sure
Mhm.
that you scope everything uh, from a request all the way to conclusion, uh, given that specific account. And then you really do it at two levels. Um, in Ruby, you can have pundit policies, which will do the queries such that all the queries are scoped to that account ID, and then you would also authorize, that the current user has access to that account before showing information. So that's the normal way of maintaining good multi-tenancy, is to have good access control, which
Right.
is something Pundit will do. Um, when it comes to Elasticsearch, I do believe you can restrict the search to, say, that account ID, but it's easy to forget. But if you do it right, and what you're ultimately searching is objects that um, you can authorize through the database object, um, you can prevent a security breach that way, in the sense of, I showed you something that you shouldn't have seen, but it can be very slow. It is very slow to authorize each result in a big search independently, because that turns every search into an n+1 query of access control checks. So um, I know that wasn't a direct answer,
Mhm.
but those are some of the patterns. Mayra, in your work, or Dave might know, I don't know that I've ever used Elasticsearch in a multi-tenant situation. Maybe one of you have, but I believe you would do it like I described, scoping to an account ID in that case.
Yep, you got it. Like I think Walter said, I've used SearchKick a lot on doing my interface for Elasticsearch, and that's what we did. We would always scope in the organization ID or company ID or whatever into each one of the searches.
Walter, have you run into that with your work?
Finding the mute button there. Um, I have not tried to do anything multi-tenant with SearchKick. I've so far just used it to do site-wide search, where I'm searching over 6 or 8 different models and presenting a mixed bag of results based on just how relevant they are rather than what they are.
Right. That's kind of my experience too. But Luis, or Mayra, do you have any thoughts on this, Mayra, before we close on this thread?
Honestly, in the project that I was presenting, it was the only project that used Elasticsearch, but Elasticsearch is focused on the citizen, so there is no something about multi-tenancy or something like that. If we want to separate things about databases, it's just everything based in PostgreSQL, and that is managed by an institution inside of the government. That is how it's
Mhm.
managed. So no, Elasticsearch is more for free information without no privacy or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
And I will,
Basically, you've. Yeah. Sorry.
yeah, go on,
Go on.
Luis.
Yeah. You have basically um touched everything that I wanted to hear, but it's funny that you mentioned that the usual way of handling multi-tenancy in a Rails application is single schema data separation. But the fact is that when I wanted to do that the first time, one of the most popular solutions I found was this apartment gem, I think. And I didn't know what approach they were taking, and it was multi-schema data separation. And then I investigated a little bit more, and I found that this is probably not the most maintainable way of doing that, but it's pretty popular. So I would argue that the first approach is having a single database.
Yeah. I definitely can back that. Once you start, apartment, gym, and multiple schemas are wonderful for data separation. And some companies, depending on what you're doing, may actually require that. So you
Exactly.
do need to make sure that you are checking what is possible within your domain. However, if you're a small company, yeah, sure. Multiple schemas, multiple databases works wonderful. As soon as you grow, if you ever do grow to thousands of companies, you're going to have problems every time you do a migration. Did
Mhm.
this migration run on every single database? You know, it's going to be a nightmare. So it's definitely not a scalable way. I've had to deal with it where we had over 100,000 databases because of the way this application was designed, and doing upgrades, what we ended up having to do, because some clients couldn't take the database upgrades, the schema changes, so we ended up having to fork our running instances into two separate groups, one running this version, another running a different version. But then we still had to apply security updates to each one of those to the application code. So it got to be a nightmare at scale.
Yeah, nightmare is the word. I'm sorry if I've taken this conversation away from Elasticsearch. It was kind of a initial concern. I wanted to know how do you data separate this, but yeah, definitely the conversation can. You've touched every single question I had around that, so we can come back to the initial topic if you want.
Sorry,
One
Luis.
issue. Go on, Mike.
Sorry, Luis. So you are going to give us the next meetup about multi-scheme. That could be something to. Sorry.
Well, given the introduction or the experience that Dave has had, I probably might not want to do that. I'm pretty happy with the maintaining a single database for now.
Yeah. Proper indexing and big integers for primary keys can get you, or UUIDs can get you extremely far in most cases. One other point I was going to say about Elasticsearch specifically is that don't hold that data in Elasticsearch as your pride and joy, meaning if you cannot recreate those indexes from the database within your schema or from your relational database, then you definitely have a potential problem. And I say that because I've been in situations where we had to migrate Elasticsearch from one infrastructure over to another because the developers decided to store the actual data that's not replaceable. I mean, that's where they actually stored, used it as a persistent data store instead of a full text search. And we had to migrate all of that without losing anything. And it was a nightmare. So you should always be able to re-index your database, even if it takes a significant amount of time, but you should still be able to do it off of your relational data.
This is a good point that what you're saying, Dave, because even if I see that inside the Elasticsearch gem, they have a gem inside that is called persistence. But I know that in my experience, a little bit experience in Elasticsearch, all this time working in this company, they try to reindex often. I mean, something happens and then they have to reindex. And it doesn't mean that they have a wrong indexing problem. The thing is because how all the implementations that we are doing lately are changing all, or sometimes all our scheme or all our mapping. So I think I agree with what you say. First, you have to have your related database has your make container, and Elasticsearch is just a benefit extra. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, use Elasticsearch for that speed boost to your end users, not as your actual data store. And I think that would be especially applicable in your use case, simply because you're dealing with the translations, and you might say, oh, when we get a new translation, let's just push that up to Elasticsearch. We don't need to store that. But then your Elasticsearch database crashes, or you have to migrate, or whatever situation, and now you have to figure out what to do, how to get that data out of there, and how to, hold it.
I guess we've kind of exhausted our Elasticsearch questions. Mayra, thank you so much for presenting this evening. You did a wonderful job. You mentioned that this was your first presentation in English. I thought it
Yes,
was great. I would not be able to present in Spanish, so I am impressed all the way. Content and your presence and talking about it. So thank you.
Absolutely, I
Here.
agree.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
congratulations, Mayra.
I like the presentation. Keep on it.
Thank you,
Keep
everybody.
working on it. Sorry. I can't keep this up to date. A little hungry. Okay.
The last time was my first time in this group, but even if I was late because I was in a meeting before, I really can learn a lot about the stimulus, even when I was watching the records in the YouTube channels, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm really be happy for this opportunity, and also for all the knowledge that you are sharing. I know that I am just a junior developer, but I know that I can get the experience that Dave has, and also Frank has. They are sharing here, and also Nelson. But the last time that you said the time that is there where you are living, and even because of this pandemic, you are here. Are we in this group? And I'm really happy for being here, and this is new opportunity to learn a lot of more people that I can talk about Rails, about Ruby. That is something that I really like to talk. You're mute, Dave.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
muted? Oh.
I said, yeah, absolutely. And just think if you had a T-shirt to go along with it. Hint, hint. Railstore.com. I don't handle the logistics. I'll leave that up to T-String.
Oh yeah, I am still. I am. Speaking of Birch, I was at the Cockroach DB meetup this week, or was it last week? Yeah, last week, Cockroach DB. Kind of new bug on the web. Never mind. Sorry.
Well, actually, Mayra lives in a bigger city than I do, so she probably has more experience with conferences. I'm not. Yeah, there you go, Nelson. Well, I try to keep my my workstation as clean as possible, really. So I'm not such a fan of stickers and merch and all that. But maybe Mayra, who lives in Lima, I believe. What do you think? Yeah, that's it.
This is actually a Windows, but it is for when I have to test some in Internet Explorer, some kind of solutions. But I have some.
Yeah. That's the machine that you hate. It is the Windows machine. That's the one you fill with stickers. Why?
And I'll tell you, the next time we have a actual in-person Ruby meetup, Frank, I'll bring these stickers, little
Nice.
sushi rolls.
Sushi.
I got them
I'll
just
bring
because they're awesome, not for any other reason.
It's overrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to say about that other than I don't eat that much sushi. One question. Somebody was saying something about running Ruby on Apple Silicon.
Hmm.
Long story short, I know that Apple does have a Linux VM built with their system, so good work. But then again, Apple's kind of being a bunch of trolls right now. So
So
Yep. I got my hands
Apple's
on two of the developer
Dave's
kits.
gonna know the answer to this. So Apple Silicon runs on ARM. You can compile stuff to ARM. So the things that are going to suck the most would be things that are compiled to x86 that either can't be compiled because you don't have the source code, or have a technical limitation, like they use specific x86 instructions, and those would have to be emulated. Pretty much anything that can be compiled, I expect to see native binaries available for them. But
so do
Dave,
I. But what I'm trying to say is, like, Apple is making it almost impossible to have almost any sort of open source tooling on your system with their weird signature program they're having done.
Are you talking about the Rosetta 2? So I can say I do have the developer kit because I did a Drift and Ruby episode on it. And one of the interesting things that I found about it is that it does ship with an ARM compiled Ruby. So it has native Ruby running on it already. It is the system Ruby, so that's not what you would want to use in real life. But that was pretty cool. But as far as the performance goes with doing the x86 compiling and emulation is a nightmare, at least on the developer kit. Hopefully, it's going to be a lot better on the actually released product. But just to compile and install OpenSSL took me about 20 minutes of just twiddling my thumbs.
20
But
minutes.
again, yeah.
My $200 ARM Linux laptop compiled OpenSSL in not even a minute.
Yeah, but it's probably also compiling an ARM-based OpenSSL. It's not having to emulate everything.
No, it compiled the OpenSSL source code on this. No emulation, just compiled the C code.
I think y'all are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
He was saying that it took 20 minutes to compile. Mine didn't take 20 minutes to compile.
Yeah, it's a difference of the, the native ARM versus the x86 emulation.
Okay.
So Dave, to Bailey's point, is it just that the ARM, is there not an ARM compiler that you can run easily yet, or he said something about open source, and I'm just not familiar with I'm not really an Apple developer. I just use Linux.
I'm running my own custom Linux distro here as well. What I'm trying to say is Apple they're forcing developers of open source utilities to essentially have to sign and verify things in a way that's not compatible with most licenses, and a couple other things. It's really weird.
Right. But does that mean, from
Sorry,
a practical standpoint, that Dave can't have GCC or a suitable
from a
LLVM
practical
compiler?
standpoint, you can't have GCC, you can't have LLVM. From a legal standpoint, they have to have this weird workaround, which I just don't like doing. From a hardware standpoint, I mean, Apple's hardware with Metal on it should work pretty decently, but a lot of the industry standard tools that I use for graphical programming, for hardware accelerated machine learning, it requires a Vulkan compute buffer, and Apple doesn't support Vulkan. Other things like just ray tracing. As my hobby building a game, it's using Vulkan API based real time ray tracing. Again, won't be able to target Apple for that, and I don't think Apple even supports ray tracing in general in Metal.
Well, isn't ray tracing something more NVIDIA specific?
No,
With the CUDA cores?
no. DirectX 12 real-time ray tracing is pretty much NVIDIA specific because only NVIDIA has market hardware on the market for it. But you can run real-time ray tracing in Vulkan on a Raspberry Pi Zero.
Okay.
Well, it seems like maybe an Apple Silicon Ruby open source, even if the license doesn't allow it technically, but can you make it work if you want to on your own machine? Could be an interesting.
That would be an interesting thing because just
I
they
mean,
force you that now you have to sign your iOS apps with their toolkit.
yes.
They're forcing you to do something similar for their program to put it on Apple. And remember correctly, you have to pay $100 a year per program to have to legally be allowed on the program of the platform. And that's not a problem for bigger projects. Don't get me wrong, but
I
what
doubt
about
that's per program. I bet that's per developer. It's just the Apple
Yeah, it's
developer.
developer.
Yeah.
no, it's
Oh yeah,
know,
we
personally-
ran way late, y'all. I think we should. Luis, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank everyone, and thank Mayra for the wonderful presentation. And I look forward to the follow-up in a few months when you show us how you do amazing multilingual, like translating, spell checking, like amazing UX user experience. I look forward to that.
Yeah. I promise I'm going to give the announcement about it.
Awesome. So our next meetup is going to be next month, and I think Nelson, you said December. I don't think it was next month that you volunteered for. Am I remembering that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
In December.
Cool. I don't remember who volunteered for November. No, I'll have to look. But look forward to that at that time.
Okay. Thanks.
And yeah, that's a wrap. Bye everyone. Thank you
Awesome.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you
It's
all.
good
Have a
talking
great
to you all.
day or night.
Yes.
Good night.